Everybody, and welcome back to the Telivy MSP podcast. Very excited to introduce our guest here today. Steve, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm Steve Thompson. I'm Senior Vice President of Sales and Marketing here at Apex Digital Solutions. Apex is a 25-year veteran of the MSP industry, celebrating 25 years this year.
Awesome, very excited, and we'd love to learn a lot more about what y'all do for MSPs as well. But for those in our community, hey everybody, I'm Jeremy, head of partnerships at Telivy, and we help over 100 MSPs capture new prospects with our homepage risk assessment. And MSPs like Hot Data Solutions, Strata Networks, Level 5 Management use Telivy to run risk assessments to win new clients, convert website traffic to sales calls, and help clients meet compliance. And they love Telivy because they reduce risk assessments. It takes 7 to 8 days manually to under 5 hours, fully automated with Telivy. All right, so let's dive right into Apex. Could you tell us a little bit more about what y'all do in your community?
Sure. So we're based in Southfield, Michigan. We really have sort of 4 distinct business lines that we go to market with. We have our managed services. The managed services really come in 2 flavors. There's fully managed, kind of the typical MSP, IT outsourcing, help desk, 24/7 support aspect. But we also have kind of an innovative advisory service that we offer to IT teams of varying maturity, sort of being their backstop for M365 and cloud services. In addition to managed services, we do hardware and software transactions, including being a Microsoft CSP. And then we also have a professional services business. We are staffed with consultants and engineers. And so across professional services, managed services, hardware and software, sort of one-time transactions, and CSP, those are the 4 businesses we offer out to the world. We have a lot of customers in our backyard in Michigan, Northern Ohio, Northern Indiana. But with some of the things we've been doing lately, we actually have national customers at this point.
Very cool. Could you give us an idea of what the customer experience is like with Apex? From end to end, the customer coming to you for help. What's the initial problem? How do you all solve it? And what's the long-term impact like?
Sure. So, we have a number of sort of core principles here at Apex, and there's a couple I think you're alluding to. One is solve, don't sell. So when we're introduced to a customer, we really take kind of a long-term business outcome approach, really focused on solving their issues, not simply selling them a solution. Sitting in my chair, sometimes that means we downsize people's licensing. We, are able to eliminate maybe redundant hardware or software platforms and things like that. And so, we always have sort of that outcome and the long-term relationship in mind. I think the second thing I would say about the experience is we take customer satisfaction very seriously. Not only do we sort of tout our, NPS or Net Promoter Score, status, we also pay our people on it. So one of the things that we find really, really useful in running the business is keeping our people aligned with our customers. I wouldn't have, say, a salesman who's very successful if what they do is, kill their revenue number, but sort of leave scorched earth behind them when it comes to customer satisfaction and, projects and change requests and things like that. So I think upfront, it's very much solve, don't sell, really focus on ensuring that, we've got that business outcome that they have in mind, top of mind. And then on the backside, we measure and hold ourselves accountable for customer satisfaction.
I'd love to dive into both the business result and the customer satisfaction, but the business outcome, what's an example of business outcomes that customers expect and that you all help drive for your customers?
So I think there are a couple of things, that'll really resonate with the MSP or the provider community. One is all of our professional services are fixed fee outcome-based engagements. Sure, I have a rate card internally. I know what people cost, and I'm thinking about margin all the time. But when it comes to the market, we say, here's what you're going to get. Here's the outcome. Here's the time frame, and here's the cost. And if something happens that we have to invest more because of a a miss on our part, quoting or scoping or something like that, hey, that's on me and my team, right? That isn't the kind of thing where we just dump more people on top of it. So the experience for the customer, and sometimes you have some convincing to do. People are just so used to, dividing dollars by hours and sort of thinking about value that way. But we really work hard to, position the approach of, hey, here's the outcome you're paying for. Here's the cost and the value associated with it, and then let's go ahead and roll. And in most instances, we also really keep the customer, like I said, satisfaction in mind. What that leads to is, trying to make things right, always ensuring that that outcome is top of mind. If it, even comes to include a little bit extra time, a little bit extra work, sometimes this notion of general contracting, we do a lot of work in the Microsoft Teams room space. And one of the things our engineering team does quite a bit is, they'll wade in on a challenge, a support call, or an issue with the project, and they'll find, hey, it's not us, right? It's an AV problem, it's a hardware problem, it's somebody else's software. And we take that absolutely as far as we can, right? We just don't point the finger and run. We really try and kind of act as that general contractor. And so hopefully the customer experience really is that single point of contact, whether it's professional or managed services. They get a sense of, hey, we'll handle everything. We'll do the project management. We'll do our part. We'll also work with other vendors. I've had projects where, my team is working with people from CDW and Logitech and the AV installer and Steelcase and the furniture people, right? A little wild for those of us, with like kind of a straight IT background. But I know more about low voltage wiring and furniture aesthetics than I ever thought I was going to know.
I mean, that's incredible that you all solve these problems that's in such a holistic sense. I checked out your website and it mentioned 99% customer satisfaction rating. You've been in business doing 24, 25 plus years. I'm curious, the focus on customer satisfaction, what is the driving principle behind that? Why do you put that first and foremost? Why is it important to you? And what is the benefit or the effect? And also, how do you do that? Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a great question, and I think one of the things, I'd like to say, hey, I'm altruistic and I'm a good guy and all those kinds of things. And I'd like to think at least some of those things are true. But what we found is, the greatest source of new logos, future customers, future revenue is our existing customer base, right? And whether it's an employee or whether it's a vendor relationship or whether it's that customer relationship, I'm always thinking, and I think Apex as a whole is always thinking about what are people taking away from that relationship? How are they feeling about the time they spent partnered with us? A couple of quick examples, in that room space, in the team's calling space, there's a lot of hardware relationships and there's a lot of competition for ours and the customer's attention. And, some of those relationships sort of ebb and flow. Vendor A has got the best stuff this year, but they stopped innovating or got acquired or something like that. And vendor B all of a sudden is like, wow, their stuff is kind of better. Let's start, positioning that with customers. I really think about my relationship with vendor A because I know that a year from now, it could flip again 180 degrees, right? All of a sudden, I'll be back going, hey, your stuff is great. Way to go off and innovate, get things team certified, think outside the box. And if I've salted that relationship, then, I have a harder time servicing my customers when it comes to having the best partnerships, whether it's disties, whether it's, hardware partners or software partners. And so I just think about customers the same way, right? I sleep okay at night, but one of the things that keeps me up is what my customers are saying about us in those spaces that I'm not in. They're at a CIO roundtable, they're at an industry event, They ran into somebody at the restaurant. I always want to do my best to ensure that when someone talks about their experience with us as a customer, as a prospect, as a former customer, that they at least, are able to reflect positively on how the relationship went.
Absolutely, and I absolutely agree that's extremely important as well. Stepping back a little bit, I'd love to learn a little bit more about your role as Senior Vice President as Sales and Marketing. Um, Perhaps for starters, what would you say is your team's sales process? And do you have a team working with you? Yeah, curious what your sales process is.
Yeah, so being a small to mid-sized MSP, we've been through multiple iterations of what's the right strategy. Is it outside sales? Is it inside sales? Is it all relationship selling? Is it outsourced SDR resources? Like what does it look like? And we're actually going through a bit of a transition right now. I think to really scale the business. I'm going to be focusing more on marketing. I'm going to be focused more on getting our message, at least the first part of our message, to more ears. Because I think the history of Apex over the last 24 years has really been one around relationship selling. Our CEO and founder, Jason Lambiris, well known and respected in the community, tons of connections, both civically and within business, in Southeastern Michigan. And he does an amazing job leading us and getting us introduced to customers. But I think one of the things, I've been in this role about a year, I think one of the things that I have as a charge is to say, well, how do we scale beyond that, right? How do I get in the door so that our great salespeople can take over? I think that's one of the challenges that MSPs face is, whether you call it, crossing the chasm or bridging the gap or whatever, to go from, local word of mouth, I'm the greatest provider in Portland, Oregon kind of approach to, hey, I may be focused on a few less things, but I'm a national presence for that. We're a managed partner with Microsoft. We're in the meetings room partner program. I have national reach to deliver rooms anywhere in the country. My selling model has to match that, right? My market and sell model now has to match more of a strategy that says, it isn't just who goes to the Society of Information Management event at the Detroit Convention Center. It has to be, organizations across the country that fit our key specializations, meeting rooms, Teams calling, tenant to tenant migration and consolidation, competitive migrations. And I think we'll actually step away from some of the other businesses, except for where customers request it. So I think another aspect of the selling model, to your question, is I want my sellers to be deeper on fewer things. I'm going to have a higher expectation on a narrower set of products and service lines. If a good customer wants to come and buy 10 Surface laptops from me, sure, I'll transact that and I'll make sure that they're happy and well served. Is that a message I'm going to take to the market in, San Ramon, California? Well, no, I can't outcompete CDW or Insight or Lenovo, on that level. But I can outcompete them when it comes to specific things like Teams calling. Nobody knows more about Teams calling than us. Here's why you should partner with us. So the sales model is going to evolve. I think the marketing model is going to continue to evolve as well. Both Jason and I have some strong mentors and connections and sort of blueprints from the industry over the last 20 years. I spent a decade at Microsoft working with partners like Apex. And I've seen a couple of partners be massively successful with a model I think we're trying to adopt.
Hmm. I'm curious, in addition to the Microsoft services and IT, do you all do cybersecurity services as well for your clients?
We do. There's really two aspects to the business. One of the things we do directly. And so when it comes to M365, the security products, EMS, E5, DLP, AIP, though, two-factor authentication and the identity pieces. We're really strong in that space. But there's been a massive explosion of other tools and platforms. Don't need to tell you, right, that there's been a massive explosion in software as a service offerings in this space, from Arctic Wolf to Pillar to Darktrace to just so many. And I think we've made the conscious decision. I think there was a point in time where it's like, should we build a knock? I don't know. What do you think? And we were like, no, that's not us. The 24/7 ISO certified tinted windows knock, just not our gig. And
Mm.
so we do a lot of partnering in that space. We have a few, preferred partners. I think it's one of the areas where Sean Flahy, our CTO, and his team really value their ability to be a consultant, a true consultant in that space.
Mm.
I think sometimes, in the partner community, in the MSP community, or just the solution provider community, sometimes you can get a little bit too closely aligned with some of your partners. And then, if you're a hammer, everything's a nail. And we try to keep a bit of perspective in that space. And so, long answer short, there's some things we do hands-on, really focused on the Microsoft security stack, up to and including Sentinel. But when you get outside of that, we really look to be true consultants.
Got it, got it. I'd like to switch gears a little bit and ask you about your experience with Alpha Delta Phi, the Internet Fraternity. So you're president, Board of Governors there.
Uh,
What's the story with that?
so I'm a big believer. I'm the father to two college age boys. I'm a big believer in it's good to be busy, right? Being busy keeps you out of trouble. And so Alpha Delta Phi was my college fraternity. And after graduating, I continued to volunteer and whether it was locally here with the University of Minnesota, or then nationally by serving on the Board of Governors. And the Board of Governors for Alpha Delta Phi has had me as president for the last few years. So it's a volunteer position at a fraternal organization. One of the things, just to link it back to sort of what we're talking about holistically, is I've spent the last 5 years, working with the governance and the leadership of the organization that really is that next generation of the workforce, right? So we're at, a lot of great schools, have the opportunity to meet a lot of young men, getting ready to enter the workforce. And I have to admit, it has informed some of my thinking about hiring, about the workplace of the future, about the needs of the next generation of employees and things like that, because I sort of live it every day. I see the things that motivate them and inspire them. I see the things that drive them crazy or drive them bonkers. And I don't want to be the old man yelling at kids to get out of my yard. And so I'm trying to use that experience about that next generation of the workforce, the next generation of our society, and really try and help me be a better leader, be a better manager, be a better business strategist, and so forth. Because whether I like it or not, the under 35 crowd, dominates the wide ranges of the workforce and fills a lot of those roles. And I'd be doing Apex a disservice if we didn't understand how they think about hybrid work, right? One example is we spent a lot of work doing Teams rooms, the hybrid experience at the office. But one of the things that volunteering with the organization has really taught me is there is a large segment of folks that think and oftentimes are able to do 98% of their work remotely. And so we're actually getting more in touch with personal devices and personal experiences. Believe it or not, on top of my monitor, I have a round TikTok light. Why? Because I've come to understand that good lighting, when you're doing meetings like this, Jeremy, it's just it's super key, and I never thought I'd have a round light. I never thought I'd have a 4K camera, but I kind of came to understand that even given the opportunity to go to a cool office, with lots of technology in it, there's a lot of folks that opt to work a great deal of time hybrid. So it's an interesting job. It's all volunteer. It's been a great experience, and I guess at the end of the day, it's a way for me to give back.
Well, I wanted to follow up on that. I'm curious, why is it important to you to give back to the community? Aside from the learning opportunities for your business or for your own uh, growth, but yeah, I'm curious if there's another particular reason why you want to give back that way.
Yeah, no, I think it's important, right? At the end of it all, we're here for a relatively short period of time, trying to influence, just gently nudge the direction of people in society, and the general direction of humanity. I'm a big believer in you can't take it with you. So whether it's influencing young men through Alpha Delta Phi, whether it's volunteering in my community as a planning commissioner, very much a thankless job because everyone comes and yells at us because of a new development or a guy with a bad fence and stuff like that. But that's another volunteer role that a city needs, and that someone has to step up and do. And so, there's always a selfish aspect to it. I think it makes me better. I think it makes me better able to do the things that are important to me. But I think your point is well taken. I think there's also an element of it's kind of everybody's responsibility to give a little back, and at the end of it all, it's hopefully the things will be remembered for versus whether or not I close that deal on a Tuesday in December.
No, I really appreciate that. I'm curious. So I was looking a little back on your profile. So you mentioned earlier you worked at Microsoft and you also have experience at HP, these giant corporations. What in later on in your career, you're more working, startups or medium-sized businesses. I'm curious what motivated that switch from a big corporate environment to a more maybe entrepreneurial or perhaps ownership of your role.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, there's a lot of focus on young entrepreneurs, and Bill drops out of Harvard and starts Microsoft, and Steve in their garage starting Apple and things like that. I think I've been won over to some of the best uh, some of the best personas and some of the best candidates for entrepreneurship really are folks sort of mid-career. I look back at my time at a decade at Target, a decade at Microsoft, and a couple of stints at HP, once through acquisition and once going back just to HP proper, really as the greatest business school you could possibly attend.
Mm.
The amount of learning, the amount of understanding what to do, understanding what not to do. All of that just informs that startup culture, and the ability to kind of execute more end to end in a smaller environment.
Do you have a story, an example of something you learned back then during those days?
Oh, absolutely. So when we started Productive, we had to put all of the business systems in place to run a business, right? Financials, expense management, HR systems, and stuff like that. HP, comes from an era of where you did all those things in-house, right? So there were massive HR departments, internally built expense tools, and just a massive amount of inertia that brought HP to the point, in 2015, sort of like about around the time I left, with a set of tools and processes that had just grown up over time. What was really fun is all of that informed us for when we started Productive to go, you know what? We're not in the expense business. Let's go get us Expensify. We're not in the payroll business. Let's go get Zenefits, right? And so I think the biggest thing it informed me around was kind of sticking to your core, value add. I don't want to do HR. I don't want to do payroll.
Mm.
I don't want to do expense management. And Productive was a great example where I think all of us took those learnings in big organizations and then turned around and said, hey, we want to focus on the things we're great at: content creation, being in the front of a room, delivering events, those things we were selling to the market. All the rest of that stuff, let's go find an expert and pay them for their time and their trouble. And we had on day two at Productive a more advanced, robust, secure, mobile-enabled expense platform than HP did for its 300,000 employees. And I really just got a sense of how that inertia of long-time success can also impede you in ways that you might not even realize. I think it's important for employees. One of the things I think about is that employee experience, right? They want their tools online. They want to be able to see pay stubs. They want to be able to get quick payment for expenses when they're in the field and things like that. HP made me, intercompany mail receipts for over $10 to Palo Alto. Drove me bonkers, right? And it was one of those things that, I'm always thinking about attracting great talent and retaining great talent, because at the end of the day, that's the business we're in.
Wow. Something you said earlier is still resonating with me, that working at those big companies was the perfect business school for you. I really relate to that. I spent a couple years at Microsoft myself, and really the first couple months I was working on Microsoft Xbox, and it was just fires and trying to ship for holiday season for Thanksgiving and Black Friday, and it wasn't booting, right? It wasn't working, and just hundreds of people and all the teams working together to try to get this to ship. I can't even begin to count from ship room process to precision questioning, drilling down the root of the problem, investigation. If this doesn't work, do we have a workaround? Working together with the engineering team. And there was one engineering manager who told me, don't give me a solution, give me a problem. And then we'll root cause it, we'll design a solution for you, we'll actually solve your problem rather than just, running around, trying to solve, trying to do what everybody asks us to do. There was a manager director really who stayed overnight while all the engineers were doing overtime, and even though they were just on their iPad in the lobby, they were staying there with them in the trenches, right? Just
Yeah.
present. And I learned so much from that, that I took it into my own startup experience later on, and it's I learned more there for sure than anything I learned in school. so so I absolutely relate to that.
Yeah,
And
and now it's taking those experiences and sort of reverse engineering,
yeah.
right? And figuring out, how do I do, what Microsoft did in 1980,
Mm.
which, was take it from a quaint little software firm with a bunch of bearded guys, drinking kombucha, to, a massive organization that scales. And it's interesting, working in smaller organizations, working in startups, it does become that chasm to cross, where you go from, hey, it's the founders, it's key people. Oh my God, what if Jeremy quits? We're screwed. To an organization that's resilient, and it's like, I don't want Jeremy to quit and move on, but if he does, we'll be fine.
Mm.
And that's the toughest thing for businesses to do. And like you said, so having worked at Microsoft and HP, at a place like Target, you get to see how at massive scale, a whole bunch of individuals end up coming together to deliver, an amazing result.
Absolutely. Well, on that topic of learnings, I'm curious, throughout your career, Target, Microsoft, HP, or volunteering, or your role today, or being a father of your children, what would you say is one of your most important learnings? over these years?
It's hard to say that there's, one specific learning that is, so much more important than anything else. A couple of things I like to say is one of the nice benefits of large companies is well, at least it used to be the case. There was lots of investment in, personal development, professional development classes through HR and stuff like that. And if I had to pick one thing out from those hours and hours and hours of training classes, it would be it isn't what you said, it's what other people heard. I had
Wow.
an aha moment when I was working at Microsoft, being a new manager and dealing with some struggles with employees, just getting them on the same page, getting them motivated, getting the kind of results I knew they were capable of. And I sort of had that as an aha moment, that I can sit here and think I am being abundantly clear and concise with my directions, and this is easy to understand and so forth. But if people aren't hearing you, if that's not translating into their world, that's on me, right? That's not on them. And I think there was that and a number of things around sort of that managing people for the first time that I think it's critically important people have those sort of light bulb moments. That it's what people hear. Hey, you're going from as an individual contributor, you're going from one person that can get you fired. Now you have 10 people that can get you fired, right? That it's not directing them. It's mostly listening to them and removing roadblocks or helping them solve problems. This notion of management, of directing people, go do this. It might work for some, and it might work for in some environments, I guess, if I'm in a trench in World War One, probably the right management style. But in most instances, it really isn't as simple as that. And so I think those were some of the keys. But then, in general, throughout a career, it's just being curious, right? I'm the kid that took stuff apart. I'm the kid that asked why. I think it's weird for me to have a title around sales and marketing. I've been a consultant and an architect and an engineer my whole life. I understand routing tables and BGP. Like it's really weird every once in a while. I'll be talking to our CTO and we'll be talking about something, and this just happened with Cisco has a new line of products around MTRs. Wonderful devices, sound bars and video cameras for Microsoft Teams rooms, and they have this cool functionality around sort of self-configuring. It'll configure itself in the TV. And I said to our CTO, I said, God, I wonder how that works. I wonder if it's like, like boot P and a trivial FTP server and grabbing a config. And he's like, how the hell do you know that? Right? Like, what on earth am I going through right now that, our sales chief, knows what TFTP is, right? And so I think that served me well. I think people doing interdisciplinary work, like you talked about having to ship something in the trenches informs your ability to be a leader, to start an organization from scratch, to sell, to market. And so, holistically, I think it's being curious and sort of an interdisciplinary approach. I'm very thankful that at times I can be my own SE, I can be my own sales engineer, and that serves me well.
A quick follow-up to something you said earlier. Very, very curious. It's not what I said, but it's what they heard. How do you overcome that in a people management sort of skill set?
Well, obviously, sometimes it'll be indicated by behavior, right? They'll act on what they heard, and the first reaction shouldn't be, they did it wrong. But I will say, well, how can the situation or my direction have been interpreted that way? And I'll sort of challenge myself to figure it out. The other one is really ensuring that you have enough one-on-one time and sort of collaborative time to get a sense of that, right? I am I've been working on my whole career. I'm a terrible poker player. I have no poker face whatsoever. I wear my emotions and my heart on my sleeve. And again, I was doing one of these HR training exercises, interdisciplinary work. It was at
Your mindset
Microsoft.
does.
Yeah, well, it turns out some of them were okay.
That's great.
But I was with a group product manager, so you understand the scope. He's got 300 people working for him. Um, we were working on a kind of a group project in one of these HR class settings, and um, I, I wasn't impressed by his capability to lead or execute the task at hand. And in my head, I'm going, how does this guy lead 300 people? Like I was being, both very critical and also very sort of callous in my thinking. And then we got in the 6-person circle of chairs, safe zone. And he goes, we're all working hard on this, but he goes, Steve, I just have to know, why don't you like me? And I was blown away. I was absolutely blown away because I wasn't accounting for how easy I am to read. And I let all kinds of personal biases and snap judgments not just affect how I was behaving, but I was wearing it so outwardly that it was affecting others. And after apologizing profusely, I actually thanked him for being able to have me come to that realization that whenever you're in these interpersonal situations, things like body language and mirroring behavior and looking people in the eye and so forth, they're so super critical to everything we do. And so coming back to your question, how do I know what they hear? I've been working on sort of my ability to understand where people are my entire life. It also because I know it's a challenge for me. It's also why I volunteer at the fraternity, right? Because young men, and especially at some of the colleges that we're at, there are very unique challenges that I never faced in college, and frankly, ones that my initial reaction is that's dumb, but it's not dumb to them. And it's important at a school level, when you're at Kenyon College in Ohio, population 1,600, that is a different environment that I need to look through their eyes to understand because I don't have the skills to do it. And so, meeting people where they are, understanding what they hear, being a servant leader, it's worked out so much better than trying to be directive, trying to act like you have all the answers.
Wow, that's such a valuable lesson that you outlined, and yeah,
It was
really
painful. It was a
down.
good lesson, but it was super painful.
Yeah, I imagine so, as all good, great lessons are. Steve, thank you so much. We're nearing the end of our podcast here. The last question here is, who from the community should reach out to, and what's the best way to reach you?
I'm easy to find. I'm S. Thompson at apexdigital.com. I'm open to connecting and talking to people on LinkedIn. So whether you find us through our webpage, apexdigital.com, or through our LinkedIn presence, I'm 100% open to connect. Actually, every Friday I do a podcast on LinkedIn Live called Fridays with Steve. And so lots of varied topics from like what we did here, career and some business strategy stuff, all the way through some of the technology. I'm an old geezer though, so I'm not on Twitter or Instagram and not doing hearts, things like that. But you can find me on LinkedIn pretty easy.
Awesome, and links will be in the description. And the last plug for me, hey folks, if you're an MSP or know an MSP who could use risk assessments to book sales calls or close deals, reach out to us today at Telivy.com. And special promotion for podcast listeners, if you know somebody who could benefit from winning new clients, go ahead and email us at connect us over email at contact@televy.com. When your referral becomes a Televy partner, you receive a $500 referral bonus. Steve, once again, thank you so much for sharing your stories and your experiences and career learnings with us. It's been really, really interesting. I certainly learned a lot. And thank you to our community, and we'll see you all next time. Thank you all.